So we had a bunch of people who were involved. These are the guys who did it. This is why. Yeah, I just took a lot of crap over the last couple months, whatever. I got 120 million broadband customers that are fixed. I do it again. I do it twice. Fortune 500 is even doing okay. So there are pictures of who's patched. They're pretty cool. Why all this work? So who here does not know what DNS is? You might have heard a little while. Okay. Long story short, it is the phone book for the internet. The internet does not work on names any more than the telephone network does. You have to put a number in for any name. It is a distributed system, which means it's like voicemail hell, where you keep getting bounced from one system to another. You start off on the root servers, you ask them for www.foo.com. System says, I don't know. But why don't you ask this guy over here? And then you go to the comm server and say, hey, do you know what www.foo.com is? And they also say, I don't know. But why don't you ask this guy over here? And you do this over and over and over again, so you're finally out of voicemail hell, and you finally actually get what you're looking for. This is called recursion, and it is a pain in the ass. Therefore, we dedicate recursion to a set of servers called name servers, like Bind or DJB, DNS, or so on, where your host is a client of the local. So what about the bad guy? If everything depends on receiving the right number for the right name, wouldn't the bad guy want his number returned instead? You try to go to Yahoo, you get a bad guy's number. You try to go to Google, you get a bad guy's number. You try to go to your bank, you get a bad guy's number. Actually, that sounds pretty damn cool. So, here's the question. So, when the name server asks, say, ns1.foo.com for www.foo.com, could the bad guy reply first? Couldn't he like to have his answer accepted? Oh, totally. The way around this is called a transaction ID. It is a random number between 0 to 65,000 that allows the response from the legitimate good guy, the real ns1.foo.com, to be separated, disambiguated from the bad guy's fake reply for www.foo.com. So it's not perfect, but no, the good guy's got an advantage, like 65,536 to 1. Those are some pretty long odds. And even better, when the good guy wins, well, he can say how long he wins for. Is this name to number mapping going to last a minute, an hour, a day? You know, one day times 65,000 races divided by 2, that's like 84 years for the bad guy to actually win. That's a long time, right? So this was the entire concept of this job, forgery resilience. It basically said make your TTL as long as possible. This entire job is a dare in the Defcon community. Here's the problem. First, if this is to be a race between who can reply with the correct random number first, the bad guy has a starter pistol. Look, the good guy has to wait for the correct transaction ID to go over the river and through the woods to actually provide the good guy with, hey, when you reply, use number 8312. Yeah, the bad guy doesn't need to wait. He doesn't know. But you can be like, hey, you go look up www.foo.com. And you use transaction ID 1, I don't use 3. So the bad guy can always reply first. He may not have the right transaction ID, but he's getting there first. Second problem, by the way, the first problem was kind of known, so is the second problem. Who said the bad guy can only reply 1? The winner of the race is the first person to show up with the correct number. In order to say the bad guy can't try lots and lots of random numbers. So if you can try 100 numbers, the odds go from 65,536 to 1 to 655 to 1, which are still long odds. And when he loses, he has to wait for the TTL. That could be like 655 days, almost 2 years. Or not. Look, TTL is not a security feature. It's what I said in my talk last year. If the bad guy asks the name server to look up www.foo.com 10 times, there's only going to be one race with the good guy. It's going to be like the first race will happen, www.foo.com will be looked up. The other 9 times the lookup is spawned, that's just coming out of the cache. That's just being remembered. There are other names besides just www.foo.com. Well, at least we can pretend there are. We say, what about 1.foo.com, 2.foo.com, 3.foo.com? The TTL, that race timing limitation, only works on an entire name, not on different subdomains. So, you can just repeatedly cause lookups for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you may have only a 1 out of 655 chance of winning. Okay, so you try 655 days and you win. There's a problem. You are now the proud mover of 83.foo.com, but you wanted www.foo.com. Is there a way to get from 83 to www? Totally. Look, here's what you do, right? You got 83.foo.com. You wanted to steal www.foo.com. As the bad guy, you've got three possible responses. When your transaction ID is accepted, whatever you have in your message is actually going to be looked up. They're going to open up the envelope and parse what you had to say. And the three things you could say were, hey, I got the transaction ID right, and here's your answer for 83foo.com and 6666. So 6666. And that can work. There's, I don't know the answer for 83.foo.com. Or the fun one, 83.foo.com, I don't know. But why don't you ask www.foo.com and here's the address? This has to work because it's how you got to ns1.foo.com in the first place. You went from root to com, you go from com to ns1.foo.com, you go from ns1.foo.com, as far as you know, to www.foo.com. You're basically using the other half of DNS to attack target names. So I wrote this tool called DNS break, named after a common method for lockpicking. Sends a query to a name server for random.foo.com. So that guy has a starter pistol. It sends 200 fake replies to the name server with transaction ID from 0 to 200. The bad guy can reply multiple times, and each of those replies contain name server redirections to www.foo.com. In technical terms, it's random.www.foo.com in NS, www.foo.com, www.foo.com in 8666. It probably won't work. Oh well, try again. So, these are the packets it looks like. This is the actual execution trace. Sorry, I don't have time to leave it on. This is what happens when you actually run it. Now, this works against pretty much everything in wide deployment. Bind 8, bind 9, MSDNS, Nominum, which is used in most of the ISPs, does not necessarily work against the rest of the name servers out there, but they're just not really out there, so does that count? The most commonly offered defense. Our DNS servers are super secure. They do not accept queries from the outside world. They must be safe. Well, can someone on the inside look up www.secure.com? Will an IP come back as 157.222.4520? If so, you might have a problem. So look, we have this thing that you got to realize. The attack works partially because of what are called bailiwicks. Root servers can return any name they want, and that name will be trusted. Com servers can return any name they want, and that name will be trusted as long as it ends in com. Foo.com can return any record for foo.com. Now, it wasn't always this way. This guy, Eugene Cashball, was like, hey, I can totally stick extra records in any reply. So when you look up EugeneCashbro.com, I can create a new TLE and just say, by the way, have you heard of .cash? Yeah, so he got extradited from Canada and put in federal penitentiary. Don't do that. But the bailiwick system was invented to deal with his issues. 1997 was the last time we had a DNS bug, not a random bug. There was some awesome bugs that happened over the last 10 years. But 1997 was the last time we had a DNS bug this bad. Because in 2002, with the birthday attacks that everyone thinks I was talking about, presumptuous, you couldn't overwrite entries that were already in the cache. So if you lost the race, you couldn't just try over and over again. 2007, the meat client transaction ID prediction still could not overwrite the cache. Although meat doesn't get as much credit as it deserves. So, if that was what behaved with in-bailiwick stuff, does that mean you may not make a referral either to a foreign name server or whatever that is out of your bailiwick? No, you totally can, because that was just how DNS worked before cache broke everything. So what they did was they said, if we're told at foo.com to go look up something in bar.com, we won't reject it, but we will start from scratch. And we will go to the root and go to com and find the actual bar.com server, and we will make our way back such that foo.com can have a referral to bar.com, but we actually know the real bar.com ID. That means whenever someone looks at foo.com, The foo.com server can force an immediate lookup to bar.com. It happens instantaneously. The bad guy has the starter pistol. So, what you do as the attacker is not cause random things inside behind the firewall to look up foo.com, because then you have a huge timing issue. You have to know exactly when it happened. You don't make them look up bar.com, target.com, whatever you're trying to hit, because that gives you a timing issue. What you do is you have the internal guys look up foo.com. And whenever they come to you for foo.com names, or bad.com names, when they come to you for bad.com names, when the internal name server comes to you for badguy.com name, you send a CNAME referral to target in your target domain. And this works very well. Now, how do you make the internal lookups happen? Over the ways. Alright, making starter pistols on this bad guy. You got a web browser, don't you? Web browsers will do a DNS lookup every time you look at them funny. Any link, any image, any ad, anything will cause a DNS lookup. You don't even need JavaScript. It would help. Mail servers. Anyone here wants them over and they get email from the internet? Oh, come on. Yeah, you know what's coming. So look, you even sniff in the general direction of a mail server on the internet, and it is going to do a DNS lookup. You say, hello, DNS lookup. Literally. You tell us who you are, because I want to know more information. DNS, can you tell me? On spam check, maybe you're a spammer. Let's go ahead and look at the spammer DNS server. What could possibly go wrong? When trying to deliver a bounce? When trying to send a newsletter, does anyone here have Lyris, the major email server at their site? You might want to tell them, by the way, please fix yours. Who puts a custom name server in a mail server and doesn't tell anybody? Sometimes when you mail a company, a human being replies to you, and when they do, they got to figure out where to deliver the mail. Web log resolution is fun. Who here runs a web server? You know, who has ever looked at the web log? Yeah, so when it goes ahead and takes those IP addresses and turns them into names, that's DNS lookup under attacker control. Web bugs and documents, calling home is not just a privacy violation anymore. There's lots of things in Web 2.0. IDSs are fun. You just make an IDS think you're an attacker and it wants to investigate you and does do a DNS lookup. Roy Oren's trick was great. So you get a query from a Microsoft name server and reply with another query. It asks you a question, you go, no, I got a question for you, and we totally go look it up. Like on the port, send a DNS request on my port 58219, what? You can spoof internal IPs from the outside network. This has no right to work, but a whole bunch of people have crappy router access and think they're firewalls. Wrong. So what did we do? Look, we went ahead and we said, well, we got an odds right now of 1 out of 65,000. We got to increase that. We got to increase that to between 1 out of 163 million to 1 out of, I'd say, 2 billion. Actually, technically, 1 out of 4 billion. This is an improvement. That's a lot of traffic to go unnoticed. It is not necessarily too much traffic, Mr. Russian physicist. We know. Yes, I will totally take an attack that takes 2 billion packets over one that works in 32,000. Somehow I think it's a little easier to defend against one versus the other. Now people are saying, well, I have this perfect idea, perfect solution. Oh, it's wrong. Look, there are so many variants of this attack. I do not know how we got to 2008 with nobody knowing how to actually exploit this thing. You have CNAME, DNAME, extra glue. You have all the things that make the authoritative servers not reply, like this power DNS bug. You go ahead and you look up an unnamed query type as opposed to A or NS or CNAME. There's lots of different record types in DNS. If you look up one that does not exist, the power DNS authoritative server just doesn't reply. There's another way back to 1 out of 65,000 lands. And other methods. Anything that causes the cache to clear. Anytime you have naturally low TTL records. Anytime, you can make a name server not reply because you flooded with attacks and decided, no, I'll go get my firewall rules out in the outside world. Anytime, how about you just pollute subdomains? That works at the Torque on top. There's so many variations. The whole game was this. Look, either we do point fixes, meaning we try and fix this, we try to fix this, we try to fix this. And when we screw up, we're back to 32,000 packets of misery. Or we have a generic sledgehammer fix that applies a minimum level of security to vulnerabilities we don't even know about, also known as the DJB solution. DJB was totally right. Even in all of his latest complaints, we actually completely agree. He's like, dude, guys, this was 99. We need real crypto. Yes, we do. But if we had showed up back, if we had this big secret summit back at Microsoft in March, we had actually done that and said, like, big DNS bug. Our solution is DNS sec. That's right. One happy guy in me and the rest of you looking in horror. I'm not saying DNSSEC is not necessarily the right long-term solution, but it's sure not the right short-term solution. So, there's going to be a ton of solutions offered. People are going to talk about lots and lots of things, and we've broken most of them. But look, I will tell you this. All the things that are, we'll get this name server online, this name server online, unless the root servers and the COM servers, in fact, all the TLDs are either backwards compatible or code migrated to your solution, it doesn't matter. Because I don't care how secure ns1.foo.com is if I can pop a.gtldservers.net. Because what do you think told me to use ns1.foo.com in the first place? So I've got a blog entry at my homepage, www.fair.com, that just talks about all the other things. The long and short of it is, we figured out everything else was broken in at least some way. We'll figure out that we're going to need to fight through this for like some period of time. In the meantime, let's not have a 32,000 packets to do. So, there is some stuff in the client. I don't want to go too much in depth on it because I got all sorts of fun server attacks. But I do want to say that there was some research a while ago about predicting the transaction ID in the client. Given ID 1, given ID 2, you can determine ID 3. And everyone said, that's nice. If you're ever in a position to learn ID 1, you don't need to predict ID 2. You know ID 1, you can reply first. This bug is BS. Why did Microsoft fix it in April in the April 1.0 patch? That was ridiculous. No, it was the right thing to do. And here's why. For you to spoof a response from a DNS client to a DNS client talking to a local name server, you have to get two things right. The UDP source port, and you have to get right the transaction ID. How do you know the source port? Well, when you make an HTTP connection to someone before April MSRC, that connection would say go out on source port 10,000. And you know what port the next DNS request would happen on? 10,001. Oh, that's pretty easy. But what about the actual transaction ID? You can't treat DNS in isolation because everything uses it. So, when a DNS reply happens, you get two things. You get a HTTP request going out, when, immediately, wherever the bad guy says it. Hang on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have some good news for you. Dan is going to do his talk until 10 minutes to 12. He is not going to go to the breakout room. He's sitting here to answer questions. People who wanted to see, let's think the president's votes, and 10 things that are pissing me off, they will be in Dan's breakout room at this point. I again apologize for the inconvenience and the hassle of flying Defcon Airlines, and we sincerely thank you for your help this morning.
Wait. Great!
I don't say that they have a harder way to comment, I apologize. Math becomes hard. No one ever said I was very bright.
Alright.
Thank you, folks.
So apparently I get to totally relax. Alright, so this apparently means that I get more time than I had at Black Hat, which means I get to have a whole bunch more fun. Oh yeah. Turns out other protocols use DNS. And when DNS is done, other protocols do things immediately to DNS-controlled locations. So what that means is, if you guess the right transaction ID by, sending 65,000 packets to a DNS client, you are able to control when you guess correctly, you will get a packet time. And when you guess correctly, the HTTP query will go to a destination that you set. Where? These are not huge signals. However, all we want is 16 bits for a transaction ID. 16 bits? I can win 16 bits. Here's how we're going to do it. Client is going to go to a website controlled by the bad guy. Client is going to say, I need to look up badguy.com against the local name server. Local name server is going to work its way throughout the internet. And it's going to find the name server of the bad guy. And the bad guy is not going to reply to the local name server. It's just going to sit there. So, local name server is waiting for a reply. They can't do anything. So client is just going to sit there waiting for a reply to. And they're just going to sit there, open port, open transaction ID, just waiting. Now the bad guy does something, but doesn't send any packets to the local name server. Bad guy sends packets directly to the client. Knows what port to use because it leads through HTTP. Doesn't know what transaction ID to use, so he tries them all. On average, in 32,000 packets, he will guess the correct transaction ID. If he doesn't guess the time, oh well. But he eventually will guess correctly. Now, there's a couple signals here. Timing. When the HTTP connection arrives, because that's what happens when you finish a DNS reply to a web browser, you get an HTTP connection. Now, if you have say a 3-second window and can make wait time by about 100 millisecond chunks, you get about 5, maybe 6 bits of data. But you can try it over and over and over again. Also, when you spoof that reply, beyond just timing information, you control the location that the web browser is going to go to. So if you have 256 addresses, you can basically say, at 1.3 seconds, my 130th of my IP addresses went ahead and got a packet. That actually gives you quite a few more bits. If you happen to have a class B, it's because I stopped, here you go. But if you happen to have a class B, you don't even need timing data. It just works. Now, if you have IPv6, it's really, really easy, but real world. So, there are totally other hosts out there. Could we return IP addresses of hosts we don't have, we don't own, and use the web browser to somehow basically borrow the other hosts for our scanning purposes? Who here remembers idle scanning? Check it out. Idle scanning is all about you find 64,000 boxes on the internet that never get traffic. But when they do, you can tell because their IP IDs change on return packets. So, you go ahead and you cause some client to send a packet to one of 65,000 servers. Then you go to all 65,000 servers and say, was it you? Was it you? Was it you? Eventually, it would theoretically work. Idle scanning worked really well when it was figured out. Now there's all these bastards scanning the internet, screwing up idle scanning. Sorry. Then I was looking at pointer pollution, when an IP address communicates somewhere, there'll be like a reverse DNS lookup. That wasn't reliable at all. Anyone here ever gone to a talk with Billy Hoffman? Billy does bad things to JavaScript. And at some point, I just needed to do the Billy Hoffman option. So here's the idea. I would return one of 64,000 web browsers, one of 64,000 web servers to the client. I would know which one the client would get, but whoever it got would be under a domain I controlled, meaning I could read back From the web browser, hey, which page did you get? That actually works fine. And you can do that directly with content, so I'm looking at what happens to document.cookie. So basically I'm using JavaScript to eventually pick out DNS transaction IDs. What could possibly go wrong? Of course, it's way easier with my attack. Basically, you don't even try to get the transaction ID. Just force the page, look up your name, fill in whatever answer you want. And this is actually the exact attack implemented in the field, DNS-spoof.c from psychopod@yahoo.com. I don't know if DMDA is a group name, but good job. Initiate sequence trigger DNS lookup by the ADNS resolver, set the same range to spoof DNS IDs in the constant flood spoofed as the primary DNS server. So, it's not theoretical. Psychopod totally did it.
When?
This was about 3 or 4 days. Let's see. Was it the 25th, 26th of July? Somewhere around there. Good stuff. DNS clients have never been the focus of this work, though, because it attacks one box. Would you rather attack one or, everyone? So we've been focusing on servers. Is that it? No, that's how to attack DNS. That's not the interesting question. The interesting question is why to attack DNS. So this is where things get embarrassing, because wow, we've been doing a lot of copy things on the internet for a long time. So check it out. Let's start with the TLDs. It is in fact possible that you start with poisoning the TLDs. That's right. Don't bother with poisoning foo.com or Google or Yahoo or just poison everything. Directly you can poison it by changing the DNS record off of COM. Indirectly, just poison the AGTLD servers on that, BGTLD servers on that, CGTLD servers on that, and so on. Now, when the bad guy poisons COM, he gets all requests, even requests that he didn't know in advance that he wanted. Because remember, when you go to the root, you don't just ask, what's the next COM server? Say, I'm looking for www.foo.com. So when you poison higher in the DNS hierarchy, the name server comes to you and says, hello, would you like download.microsoft.com? Would you like it for 10 days? Would you like it for 10 hours? Would you like to only take Microsoft? Would you like to take only the specific name at Microsoft? You basically get complete control. You actually get asked what you want to poison and for how long you would like to be poisoned for. Correct? The obvious first step to do from here is MX intercept. MX intercept, not just the NSA anymore. Mail is special. It's special to the point that it has its own DNS record. It has an MX record. You can tell not only does someone want to speak to foo.com, they want to send an email. The attacker can actually pick off which names or which mails it wants to take and which ones it doesn't. Can silently intercept, and then let the mail run off to its own destination, or can interfere. Here's where we get into real world how things get popped. Okay, about a third of all attacks come from direct user action. Loading a document, downloading and installing malware. The game is to get compliance from the user to assist in executing the attack. And since users want to see dancing pigs, this is not necessarily that hard. But even your best user, even your most trained user, even user who doesn't want to see dancing pigs, still needs to get work done. And work is done by exchanging documents, and exchanging executables, and exchanging zip files over email. So, if you're a man in the middle, and you see a document going by, you don't interfere with it, or you don't block it, you don't even just read it. You inspect the document en route. When it arrives, the user's like, well, I was just having a conversation with Bob, and here's the contract that will get me a bonus this year. Open. Should the spam filter stop? When the man in the middle does intercept, it is in fact true that the actual manipulation is now going to come from the IP address of the bad guy, and not necessarily the IP address of the real mail server. Now, you might say, but the spam filter will catch this. How do the spam filters work? Someone just said poorly. That guy gets a beer. So, you end up being able to hijack spam filters. You can actually go ahead and block mail from arbitrary domains now. I'm ready to that. So, I'm not going to go fully into the voice over IP stuff, but SIP ain't looking too good either. SIP ends up using SRV records on a DNS, and it looks like invite register messages can even say, hello, Mr. Phone over there. Please go ahead and look up this thing, or pistol. They might be looking into this. So, beyond just mail, beyond just zip, yes, the web is a little bit host. You can directly poison all websites through COM. And that will work great, but it will only let you replace content. What if you wanted to be able to read it back? What if you wanted to not just make the user think, oh, it's fake gmail.com. What if you wanted the user to go to real gmail.com? But by the way, there are some extra little scripts that was running in that execution context. Well, you could target the static files that are loaded by any complex web app. You load a script file, you win. You load CSS, like just making it, CSS has a method called expression. And expression will run JavaScript. So all you do is poison the server specifically targeting CSS, and you win there too. If you wanted to do this to everyone and not just one particular site, we have these nice things, ad servers, analytical servers, that are run through script source. If you have script source, poison DNS name with HTTP, that one poison is going to hit the entire web. Now I know you're thinking, that's a double save on. However, I'd like to point out, did you guys know the internet is more than just the web? Like, more things use HTTP than just web browsers? Welcome to the third age. The first age of hacking. You want it to get booked. All security is what are you parsing and who are you parsing it for? Servers were the source of anonymous parsing for most of computer security. You wanted to file a box, you came in over FTP, you came in over Telnet, mail, web, and time would let you in. These were the things that consumed bytes from a bad guy. What are you parsing? Crap. Who are you parsing it for? The bad guy was the server. So these were the things that got locked down. We got a little better with servers. So now, not all. Now, everyone's focusing on client-side attacks through the web browser. Because ultimately, you can totally lure people to you, and when they are lured, they go ahead and they take attacker-controlled bytes and give it to JavaScript, ActiveX, Java, image format, DOM. There's so much complexity reachable through the web server. So we've been spending the last couple of years finding client-side attacks and finding them actually out in the field, on porn sites, on gambling sites, etc. Now, the browser age is not over. Oh, you can totally have multiple bugs going on at the same time. And indeed, these DNS issues really affect the browser. If nothing else, all these ActiveX controls that are sitebox that only work on a particular domain, if that domain is http:// broken. But this is now the third age. And the third age involves everything else. This is a desktop on the Internet Cafe near my home. That is real. Here, you probably can't see all the icons, but here we have Flash FXD and Skype and ICQ and QuickTime and SSH Secure File Transfer and Yahoo Messenger and Flush QuickCam, which probably has an auto-updater, and Ad Awareness and Personal, which definitely has an auto-updater, and iTunes and AIM and Golden Casino and Internet freaking Checkers. I think we may have some new attack surface to play with. Who here remembers the vulnerability in Sidebar last year? Last year, this came out, and last year maybe the year before. Well, whenever Sidebar got looked at finally, someone noticed, this downloads RSS feeds from the Internet. When it downloads those RSS feeds from the Internet, by the way, they can totally contain code to run. Crap. But we didn't see widespread exploitation because the code was retrieved from a fixed address that the bad guy could not change and the bad guy could not control. But with DNS, you can. This is a general theme that you can take communications that were once secure and migrate them, or if not secure, you can take communications that was once always go to a non-attacker controlled destination and you can totally take it over. So, sidebar is not special in this regard. Browsers are really, really good client code. I may very well be the first person in computer security to have ever said that. But it's relative. Browsers have been getting their ass kicked for 10 years. AOL Instant Messenger, not so much. Look, what do you guys think happens when you fuzz randomly corrupt data into weak clients? Well, my buddy, Billy Danspundo, went ahead and did that. And all he did was feed random data to IRC clients. And with one tiny little fuzzer, he wrote BitCheck, MIRC, XCheck, ADIRC, ADROP, Epic, Ninja, Emacs, ERC, Turbo IRC. It was just a catastrophe because clients are written like crap when they don't have to deal with malicious servers. Well, most clients that have ever been written have not had to deal with malicious servers. ISP clients have apparently gotten better after this fuzzing effort, but there's a lot of other stuff that people are running. Games. Has the actual gaming next overlook security hole talk actually happened? Yeah. Who here actually went to it? Okay, listen to that guy. Totally insanely right. Game developers have time to do many, many things. Right? Secure code that can deal with crappy servers is just not one of them. Or at least hadn't been because it wasn't a ship requirement. We're going to have to get a little better here. Now I need to get back to this. Who needs an exploit even? Anyone hear about evil grade and Cisco motto stunts? Okay, you don't need a buffer overflow. You don't need some crazy ninja stuff. A bunch of clients will just come to you and say, hey, got any code for me? I need a new version. You're the bad guy, I totally got a new version for you. We knew this was broken. I didn't realize anyone big was still screwing this up in 2008. So Sun's got Java and OpenOffice, Apple with Mac OS apparently, Winamp, iTunes, LinkedIn. We knew about LinkedIn. Turns out if you send a mail to security at LinkedIn.com, someone was listening. I sent the mail, I got a call back in 20 minutes. Oh, hi, Dan, I bet you're talking about that food bar. Yes, among other things. Props to LinkedIn, they fixed that pretty good. At least I think they did. Auto upgrade is a pain in the ass. You have to make sure the update package is signed, and signed by you, and signed by you with a key that says I'm supposed to be able to sign code, and signed from a signature that has not been revoked, and be a signature on, by the way, the same product. And also be a new version, because if you release something insecure 6 months ago, you don't want an auto upgrade back to the vulnerable version. Now you could use SSL, but people are like, oh my god, performance, I can't do it. So, there's about one update system that may actually pull this off. Windows Update, everything else is probably host. Adobe might be okay at this point, because they went through some headaches first. There have been some talk about Windows Update. As far as I know, there's no actual justification behind it. But yeah, those guys are pretty paranoid. There's a paper called Secure Software Updates, Disappointments and New Challenges by Police Mumberg and Fu. It's a pretty good paper. If you're interested in subject, just take a look. Check this out. This comes out 2 days after I announced there's a problem in DNS. Package managers have Achilles heels. It turns out all the Linux auto updaters are really, really broken. And someone said, what keeps you up at night? The thought of attacks on your package manager or previously discussed and patched vulnerability in DNS. What is this or you speak of? What, I can only use one bug at a time? DNS provides us with the man in the middle that we can then use to break broken package managers. There's no competition between bugs. In fact, if you take 2 awesome bugs and combine them, you get totally awesome bugs. People say, but SSL will save them. Alright, let's talk about SSL because this is the first big test of SSL. Has it stood up because of the strength of its crypto, or has it stood up because no one can be a man in the middle on it and thus just get around whatever protections it offers? Let's find out. For SSL to be effective, first of all, you must actually use it. It works better if you plug it in, and the web does not plug it in. SSL is not just kind of the exception, it is barely existent on the internet right now. How many executables will you personally download insecurely this week? And remember, attackers can pick and choose what domains to snipe. So everything will be perfect right until you hit that download link from the one server that provides those downloadable executables. And then you're going to the bad guy. And you think people stop using FTP? I didn't. FTP is still all over the place. There's foreshadowing there. May not even go into it. Second, SSL. You must never downgrade. Too bad, downgrade is a fundamental way behind most of the way we use SSL on the web. You go to www.foo.com and HTTP, and the web server says, oh, you totally should come to me securely. Here, let me upgrade you to security. Now everything is great. You know what the bad guy does? Not that. Oh, and SSL errors. By the way, I was just thinking I could tell you, I know you wanted to have a secure link, but it's not secure at all. You still want to use this site? Okay. 41% say they totally ignore the error and use the site anyway, thus obviating any of the value from security. You might say, but Dan, 43% get all worried and leave the site and won't deal with it. Yeah, that's what people say. You know what people also do? They lie a lot. When you actually look at the data, an online bank in New Zealand had certificate expired. It just went down. Like, time ran out. And you know what happened? 99.5% of users still entered their credentials. That one guy who didn't is probably in the room right now. Data suggests the DNS-based attacker has a remarkably high chance of actually winning. You must actually check to see if the certificate is signed by someone. Hey, look, guys, I have a secure connection to the bad guy. So, I may be scanning the internet every once in a while, all the time, never stop. But, I took a look at some SSL data. 327,467 SSL certificates were scanned. And I just took a look and said, I don't even want to see if the chain is valid. All I want to see is if they're even pretending to be signed by someone else. Or they're just saying, hi, I'm me. Why? Because I said so. 140,355 SSL certificates because I say so. That's not security. They might say, but Dan, at least there's a browser error. You know, if legitimate use has a browser error, I think the user is always going to click through 100% of the time. And hey, what about the things that are not browsers? What about other applications? So, I was going to talk about other applications, and then, hey Mike, why did you come up here? And then I started hearing about someone who actually looked into real applications, like SSL VPN. Now everyone, this is Mike Zussman. Say hi, Mike. Hi, Mike. Somebody here. Somebody here forgot to submit Defcon. And I was like, yeah, I wasn't speaking black hat, but oops, I forgot Defcon. So he's here now, because it works too damn good not to be here, but he's got a drink. Yeah. All right, Mike. Why don't you go? So, Mike, a major other application on these SSL VPNs, right? Why, yes, Dan, they are. So, Mike, why don't you take a couple seconds and tell us about how good SSL VPNs are at actually checking the certificate?
I would be glad to. And the answer is, in general, they are not.
Some of them have the ability to, but usually it's an option that can be turned on, turned off, pretty willy-nilly. What these, and the reason for that is if you're a company, you're an enterprise, and you're evaluating an SSL VPN, you're not going to go buy your own cert. You're going to use a self-signed cert. You're going to test with it. Maybe once you actually get one in production, maybe, hopefully, you'll buy a real one and use it. But I've seen cases where that just hasn't happened, and these self-signed certs just remain in use in production. But that's not even the biggest problem with SSL VPNs. Just a little background on me. I worked for a company called Whale Communications that made an SSL VPN, got bought by Microsoft, and I parted ways with Microsoft about a year and a half ago. Something like that. Anyway, so what these SSL VPNs do, these are web-based SSL VPNs. They rely on ActiveX objects to do everything. So the first time you log into an SSL VPN, you get a Mental ActiveX installed. You got to click through all your warnings. You get it on there. And once it's on there, well, you don't get warned about anything anymore. That ActiveX object is used to upgrade other parts of the VPN client components and do little cool things like, I don't know, interface with WinSock and reconfigure your network stack and do lots of cool things like that. Then the one feature that always bothered me about SSL VPNs, customers would say, hey, I actually work in the support team. They'd say, hey, I'm configuring this application, and when the user clicks on the link in the web portal, I really just want the application to launch automatically for the user. So what do we have there? We have a web page that's telling the client to, hey, launch this arbitrary executable. And that's all tapped down from the server. So what you have is a very interesting attack vector for repurposing of these ActiveX objects. Now, you talk about site locking, saying an ActiveX can only work with a specific domain. Well, that doesn't work for SSL VPNs because everybody has their own domain name. That can't be hard-coded. You can't pass it down from the server because then an attacker can just spoof it anyway. So that just doesn't work. It can work if you, what the Microsoft product actually did, and I never saw any other SSL VPN do this. It could be out there, I just haven't seen it. Is the first time the ActiveX is actually invoked on the client, it'll prompt the user, it'll say, hey, this domain name is trying to use me. Do you want to let them use me and execute commands on your machine? The error message is actually, the warning message is actually very specific, that it says, I can execute commands on the machine. So the user can then whitelist it for that domain only. So how do we get around that? DNS. Exactly, DNS. But fortunately, we don't even really have to worry about that with most SSL VPN vendors. So what I demoed at Black Hat was, and I'm not here to slam the vendor because I actually had a very positive experience with the vendor, and they were very appreciative of how I handled the situation. But a different vendor, I basically knew how these VPN devices were made. So I figured, well, if I can just get my hands on another one, I'll find all these problems. So SonicWall happened to have a demo site. So that's where I went and started doing a little poking around, a little research, and sure enough, their base installer ActiveX likes to upgrade itself. And it likes to reach out to whatever website is invoking it and download a nice little executable and run it for you. So we fixed that. SonicWall fixed it very quickly. They have patches available, and it was a great experience. So props to SonicWall on that. Good company, takes security seriously. Everybody's got problems, but they're doing the right thing. So that's a little bit about SSL VPNs. But about a week and a half ago, before Black Hat, all right, never mind. Who did you get a cert for? Blogging.live.com.
And how did you get it?
I placed an order on a big CA website for it.
He asked.
But don't worry, SSL will totally save us all. So, there are indeed a lot of things. I'm not even done with SSL, we can keep going. So check this out. There are actually a lot of SSL applications out there over web pages, and how do they authenticate? They usually use cookies. But okay, wait. We have secure cookies. That means they cannot be read over HTTP. It, however, turns out they can totally be written over HTTP. So you can have a user who is totally logged into a web app that is a totally perfect SSL web app, and there's another window in the background that's just, well, I can't read that cookie, but maybe I can change it. You know how many applications are actually set up to deal with someone else changing their cookie, or more accurately, changing some of their cookies? Nothing. Who here has seen this error right here, maybe as a web developer? Who here hates this error? You guys do realize that this error is here, what it's basically saying is, if you click yes, the page is not secure at all in any way, shape, or form. Then that error message makes that clear? Well, why don't we take a look at the Firefox version of that error message, which is a 10-pixel red line through a lock, which says, well, it tried to be secure, but failed. Totally failed. I do like this. So, Flash has a call that says allow insecure domain. Not only does it have a call that says allow insecure domain, which doesn't completely break SSL, but it has a freaking manifesto against the call on the Adobe site. Whoever this guy is my freaking hero. I've written things like this. I never got anything like that published. That's legendary. Then there's why is this secure? The world's most pressing Google search from about 2 years ago. There are all these financial websites that have login forms that are hosted over HTTP. But you know, if you happen to put in credentials, they promise your credentials will be provided over SSL. And to make sure you know that it's safe, because there's no picture of a lock on the browser, they show you a picture of a lock. They all know it's so cute. I think this is what happened to pixel artists. They all went to make locks for make websites. Yeah, it doesn't work at all. So engineers are very good at engineering to the 99% case. And the 99% case of security is no attacker. So you see a lot of security as long as there's no attacker. That's not useful, guys. So we do live in the future. We've gone from 26% being vulnerable in 2006 to maybe about 5% in 2008. The financial sites are improving, though they are not perfect. There's a good paper analyzing websites for user visible security design flaws. But there are still a lot of sites using oh wait, we want to protect our users' passwords, so we'll take the credential over SSL and then switch back to HTTP for performance. This does not help. But people say, oh wait, okay, Dan, these are all at other layers. At least the crypto is good at SSL. We're still using MD5. Okay, seriously, for all the comments about us knowing DNS has been broken for like 12 years, we've known MD5 has been going to fail for 12 years now. Hans Darvison did the math in 1996 and basically said, yo, this is going to break, we need to stop using it. And the United States government said, holy crap, Hans, you're totally right, in German. We totally do need to stop using MD5, and the federal government decertified it quickly. In fact, I don't know why I say a decade later, like 2 years later. I gotta go fix that. There's a generation,